The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. This is Mark from Sunrise Systems. I want to thank you for joining us today in our webinar on e-signatures for the Artemis system. I will let you know a couple things real quick that I do have everybody in mute-only mode. So again, I won't be able to hear you directly, but in your webinar pane on the right-hand side, there is a question and a chat section. I would ask you to ask your questions there. I do stop periodically throughout the webinar to look at those questions, and I'll answer those questions. Plus, at the end of the webinar today, I do stay on for several minutes and answer any follow-up questions. As usual, you should have my email address in the correspondence that you received regarding the webinar. You can always email me, and I'll get back to you there. I will also let you know that these webinars are being recorded and they will be up on YouTube. I will be sending out the link to everybody once they have been converted over and posted up on YouTube. So again, if yourself or anybody else in your organization needs to follow up or wants to review them, they'll be up there on the webinar. So just a couple quick questions. I'm just going to make sure that everybody can hear me okay. So I'm going to read a couple of names from the attendee list. So if Caitlin, Danielle, Deborah, and Denise can just respond okay in the chat or question section that they can hear me, we will get started. So I'm just waiting for a couple of responses here. Thank you, Danielle. So Danielle can hear me. Deborah is present, very good. Okay, so let's get started here. I did have, or I will point out that, again, in the webinar pane on the right-hand side, there is also a section called handouts. There are 3 handouts there. One is today's agenda for today's webinar that we're going to kind of go through. There is also a section on how to set up Artemis for electronic signatures. And then there's also what I call my simple steps to electronically sign in a disposition request. And those I made up mainly for your auditor. So we'll talk about that when we get to, doing the demo and the presentation when the auditor would sign off on a request. But again, I would download those 3 documents. If you click on them, you should be able to download them. If you have any problems downloading them, just let me know or send me an email after the webinar today. And I can also send them to you offline. That's not a problem, but they are in the handout section on the right-hand side of the screen. So a couple things real quick. I just want to talk about some terminology that I'm going to use today. Some of it you might kind of be aware of it. Some of it you might be new, or it's related to the Artemis system. But some of the things that I'll talk about, you'll hear me use the phrase e-sign. Basically, what I'm referring to is electronic signature. So we kind of use e-sign for short. And you'll see some of our buttons in the system that you click on will say e-sign, because again, electronic electronic signatures a little bit too long to put in sometimes into a button, so we usually just use e-sign. Wet signature obviously represent the way you've been doing disposition requests up to this point, applying a wet signature to that disposition request. We have three types of roles when it comes to electronic signatures in the system. One is a requester, and generally we refer to the requester as the first person that signs off on that disposition request. The second level of authorization from your organization is generally called an approver. So if you hear me refer to an approver, that's usually the second signature from your organization. And then obviously there's the auditor, right? And not every request requires an auditor signature, but if they do, if you have a record series that you're submitting that does, then the auditor would have to sign off on that request. I'll also refer to some, symbols in the system. One happens to be a green check mark, one happens to be a red X, an hourglass, or a blank box. And, some of this will come into play as you see some of the screens when we go through electronic signature. I'll also discuss user roles in the system and who can sign requests and at what point they can sign the request, whether it's the first level, like that initial sign off, or it's at the approver level, that second sign off on the request, and what roles can do what. And we'll talk about how to set up either new users in the system and what roles they play. We'll go through the disposition request screen. I'll actually create a disposition request and show you how to look at that request, how to determine if you want it to be sent via electronic signature or not, or if you still want to do it the old-fashioned way through wet signature. You still have that option as of today. We will at some point in time be making that kind of the standard electronic signatures, but today you can do either or. And then, like I said, we'll go through the whole process. Now, I will apologize that I would show you typically emails that get sent out when an electronic request is signed or a disposition request is signed, but we just found out last week when we were doing our demos that the state actually changed some of their mail servers at the state level. And unfortunately, this test version of Artemis isn't working right now to send out emails. They are currently working on making those changes to allow our test system to send emails. So I can't demonstrate to you today what the email will look like, but for the live system, that is working. So, just so you're aware, it will work with the live system. The other thing is that the e-signature functionality is scheduled to go live next Monday, March 7th. So if you tried to log into the live system today to do this, it wouldn't be available yet, but as of next Monday, this functionality should be available to you within the system. So let me go ahead and log in. I'm going to assume that, let me show my screen here, make sure everybody can see my screen. There we go. Okay, so you should be seeing my login screen here for Artemis. I'm going to first log in as an administrator or records manager here in Artemis, just so everybody can kind of see, we'll talk about the user roles and so on and so forth in the system. So let me just log in here and we'll talk about user roles first. And while I'm doing that, I'm just going to look at the questions section real quick to see if there's any questions. Okay, I think we're okay for right at the moment. Okay, so user roles. Okay, so we have a couple of different user roles in the system. If you're already aware of these roles, that's great. I might have some new people on who aren't familiar or that familiar with the roles, but we have several different roles in the system. One is what we call the agency records manager. This is the top level role in the system. Basically, the admin role manages everything within the Artemis system. This role can create new users in the system, disable users, register agencies within the system. But this role can also sign electronic disposition requests as the first signature or the second signature as the approver. So they can sign either as the requester or the approver. So if you are already a records manager in the system, you're pretty much set. You don't have to worry about making any changes. The other role we have in the system is what we call a multi-agency records disposal user. And basically what this role does in the system is this role allows the individual to create disposition requests for any agency that's set up in the Artemis system, except that this role cannot do some of the admin functions of creating users, disabling users, adding agencies or updating agencies. All they can do is submit the disposition requests across the entire organization. Again, this role can actually electronically sign disposition requests both at the first level as a requester and the second level as an approver. So just keep that in mind too. We also have an agency administrator role, and this role is basically a role at the individual agency level. So let's say, for example, I'm in the police department and I'm the agency administrator in that department. I can set up new users just for my department only, not across the entire organization. I can set them up just for the police department. And this role can also sign disposition requests both as a requester first level and approver as a second level within the organization. Then we have a regular user, and a regular user can only basically create disposition requests and sign as a requester the first level. They don't have the authority to sign as that second level within the system. And as you see, as we go through the disposition request today and we create a request in the system, you'll see how these levels come into play. And then the last role we have in the system is for your auditor, okay? So when you start to do electronic requests, signatures, you will have to get your auditor set up in the system with a username and password so he or she can sign your electronic request. And those roles can be done, gone in by, if you go to add a user here, when you go into add new user, again, if I'm at the, what I consider the general schedule agency level, there are my different roles on the left-hand side. So at the general agency level, I can either pick agency records manager, which is the top level one, auditor, or the multi records user, disposal user. But if I go down to the individual agency level, then those two roles there are just specific for this agency, and there you have the agency administrator and the regular user role. So just bear in mind that these are the different roles in the system. Now, if you have users that are already set up in the system and their roles are not indicative of how they could sign off on a request, unfortunately, there is no way in the system to actually change their role. What you'll end up having to do is you'll have to basically set them up as a new user and disable them as an old user within the system. So again, I just wanted to make sure that you see that. So again, those are the different roles we have in the system, as we go along. So let me do this. I'm going to log out of the system real quick. I have 3 users that I have created, test users, and basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to log in as an agency regular user to start off with. And again, this role means all I could do is create the disposition request and just sign off on it at that first level. So let me log in there. While I'm doing that, let me see if there's any questions here real quick. Where's my question pane? Bear with me here. I'm just closing a window or two so my question pane doesn't get hidden. Okay. Okay, so now I'm logged in as I'm logged in right now as a regular user in the system, right? And again, to create your disposition request, okay, what happened to my screen here? Okay, to create a disposition request, I'm going to go up and I'm going to click on Create Disposition Request. And pretty much the screen is going to look similar to what you've been familiar with the addition of, in the middle section here on the left-hand side, we have 2 questions now. One says, would you like to sign this disposition request electronically, yes or no? And the second question says, does this disposition request require a local agency auditor's signature? Right now that's grayed out. That will become enabled once I add my first record series and save it. But the question here where it says, would you like to sign your disposition request electronically? Right now, the default is no, because since this is a new function within the system, we're not going to enable this or make this mandatory right now. At some point down the road, as more and more users submit requests electronically, this will probably become the default. Yes, will become the default at some point in time, but for right now, we would keep it at no. So let me come up here, let me pick an agency, or I'm just going to pick the general schedule to submit my first request. Again, we have all the fields that we can fill in up here at the top. For the people who typically use or create microfilm or scan images into a certified imaging system, or even maybe had records damaged and received a damaged record certificate, if you check any of these boxes, you will still need to upload a copy of either your microfilm certification certificate or your image certification certificate or your damage record certificate. I'm going to show you how to do that in a little bit. I'm going to pretend that we have digital images here. But again, For the people who do these functions, you'll have to still upload your certificate as part of the electronic signature part. I'm going to answer our question here to sign this request electronically. I'll hit yes. And then I'm going to come down and I'm going to pick a record series here from my list and add my first record series to my disposition request. And what I'm going to pick today is I'm going to go down and pick correspondence, right? It's a nice, easy item to pick here. So I'll click on correspondence. I'll put in my dates. And let me get my dates in there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on save. And then what you'll notice that once I save this first request, you'll notice that my question here, does this disposition request require a local agency auditor's signature, is now enabled. Now, typically we default this to no because we're not going to force you to send stuff to the auditor if it doesn't have to go. However, if you do happen to put in a record series that requires an auditor's signature, which I'm going to do right now, let me go pick another record series that I know requires an auditor's signature. Let's see here. Let's do bank statements. And I will save. So if you do have a record series that does require an auditor's signatures, by default, we were automatically going to make this question a yes, and we're going to gray it out so you cannot change the answer. So the system is smart enough to know, based on how RMS has labeled record series, which requires an auditor's signature, that if you do put a record series in, it will automatically make this yes. For the organizations who send everything to an auditor, even if this is set to no, you can always make it yes and just save it, and then everything will go to the auditor. And then for the organizations who only send stuff that have to go to the auditor, there you can leave that at no. So again, you have some control over this up to the point where you put in your first record series that requires that auditor's signature. And I can continue to add more records on my request here. I mean, I can keep going and going and going until I'm done. But once I'm done adding all my line items, now you'll notice at the bottom of the screen, I have a couple new boxes that you haven't had before. One box says requester, one says approver, one says auditor, and then one says e-signature history. But one thing I did want to show you real quick, I'm just going to remove this bank statements real quick because I should have pointed this out to you before I did that. If we have this question set to no for the auditor signature, what you'll have here in the auditor box is a red X. That basically indicates that a signature is not required from that particular person, right? So the auditor doesn't have to sign this request because we don't have any records on here that require an auditor's signature. But as soon as I go in here, and if I go back and I put my bank statements back in and save that information, that red X will go away from that auditor's box, meaning that now the auditor has to actually sign this request. So let me add that again, and you'll notice that once I've added that in, that my question automatically defaulted to yes, going to the auditor, and now my red X is gone, meaning that we are going to need a signature from the auditor as well also. So again, I just wanted to point that out. So here's your requester. This is your first level signature. Here's your approver. That's your second level. Here's your auditor, and then I'll show you the e-signature history as we go ahead and we sign some of this request. Now, before I actually sign anything here, electronically sign it, I want to go back up to where we talked about digital image present. As I mentioned before, you still have to upload your certificates if you check any of these boxes up top. And you would do it the same way you do it today. You would come to the button in the lower left-hand corner where it says Upload Disposition Form and Supporting Documents. Click on that. It'll open up our imaging window here where we can actually go in and then upload our certificate. Even though it says highlighted in yellow that this request is selected for electronic signature, disposition form upload is not required. However, you can upload any supporting documents. So I'll come here, click on upload. I'll go into my sample documents, Artemis. I'll pick an imaging certification certificate, have that pull in and upload. Click on save. Again, I'm going to answer that I certify that my scanning procedures have been done in accordance with the regulations that have been allotted. I will close that. and now my form, my certification certificate is uploaded, and that will be submitted along with my request as I electronically sign this request. You can still, however, go and you can click on the print button in the lower right-hand corner if you want to see your disposition form. Okay, so here's your disposition form. If you still want to get a copy of that, you can. Now, one question that has come up in the couple of webinars that I've done already is, and it actually came up to one of the towns that I'm working with already, who is doing electronic signatures with our RIM system. Their auditor hasn't signed off on the request electronically yet, and they were like, well, can I just print it out and mail it to them and have the auditor sign it? Unfortunately, no. If you're going to do electronic signatures, you have to have electronic signatures from start to finish, meaning that everybody has to sign with electronic signatures. If you're going to do wet signatures, then it has to be all wet signatures. You can't have a combination or a hybrid of some electronic signatures and some wet signatures. It has to either be all wet signatures or all electronic signatures. It can't be, half and half. So just keep that in mind as well too, that, especially when it comes to your auditor, you want to make sure that your auditor is on board and is, available to do this. But I would let your auditors know that, this is the way the state is going. So it would be a good idea for them to, get used to this process now. And I will let you know that this whole process with electronic signatures is not new for the RMS staff in Trenton. We've been actually doing electronic signatures for disposition requests with our Records Mine RIM system for the last 4 or 5 years. And electronic signatures in Artemis have actually been rolled out to Board of Eds and state agencies since last summer. So it's nothing new. It's been, tested for many years, but it works pretty well as we go forward. So now I'm at the point where I want to start signing. So I'm the requester, okay? What I'm going to do now to sign this request, at the bottom of the screen, we have a button that says e-sign and reroute. I'm going to click on that button, okay? It's going to ask me to put in my PIN number. Okay, every user should have a PIN number. If not, you can always go up to the My Profile link and update or change your PIN number there if you don't remember it. So here I'm going to go in and put my PIN number in. I'm going to click on Authenticate. And now what comes up is a list of individuals who are at the approver level that I can forward this request to. Now, I could pick one individual or I can pick multiple. However, if I pick multiple, it does not mean that each individual that I pick has to sign off on this request. I only need one of the people I select from this list to sign off on it. So whoever the first person is to sign off as an approver, that's all I need to do. But I might not know if the people that I'm forwarding this to are on vacation, out sick, available to do this right now. So I might want to forward it to a few different people. In this case, I'm going to pick John Smith and then myself here as the approver list. Once I pick them, all I'm going to do is click on e-sign and forward. What's going to happen is the screen is going to refresh. It's going to tell me at the top in green that this request has been e-signed and forwarded successfully. And now you'll notice at the bottom of the screen in the requester checkbox, we have a green check mark. If I put my cursor there, it shows me that this was signed by Fred Couples on 3/1 at 2:23 p.m. So we date and timestamp when this was electronically signed. You'll also notice now that in the approver box, there's an hourglass, and that means it's pending signature by that person. Once I electronically sign this as a requester, an email automatically gets sent immediately to those two people that I selected from the list to let them know they have a request that needs to be reviewed and signed. They can click on the link in the request. It will have them log into the Artemis system. Once they log in, it will take them right to this screen here. They don't have to go navigate to try to find the request. It'll actually take them right to this screen here. And then at that point in time, then we can move, we can go further. So again, I've signed this as the requester. I'm done right now. What I'm going to do is log off and log in as the approver so you can see how I approve this. And as I'm doing that, I will answer a couple of questions here. I think we have a couple of questions. So I have a question that says, can the same person who requested disposition approve the request as well? The answer is a big no, 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 no. The state requires that two separate signatures from the organization be on the request. That's even today with wet signatures. If you try to do a disposition request today with wet signatures and the same person signed that request twice, it would be rejected. So in the Artemis system, you cannot, the same person cannot sign both times. You have to have two separate people. Now, obviously at the approver level, typically your approvers will be at the municipal level, will be your municipal clerk, your deputy municipal clerk. It could be an administrator. I have seen in smaller towns where the mayor or even a council person would sign off on the request. I mean, in larger organizations at the county level, it could be the department head, it could be the county records manager, administrator, county clerk. It depends on your organization and how you're set up, but usually that approver level is somebody of authority who is, becoming the second signature on that request. So, Gabrielle, I hope that answers that question for you. So let me continue on. So now I've logged in as the approver, John Smith. One of the things you'll notice that in our inbox, we've added a new link. One is where it says here, disposition request pending electronic signature. Right now I have a 3 in parentheses, which means I have 3 requests that are waiting to be signed. So what I'll do is I'll click on that. And what that's going to do is that's going to bring up my 3 requests, okay? And then this is the last one today, 3.1. This is the one we just created today. So I'm going to click on edit to display that one. And when I click on that, then we'll notice here are the line items that I looked, right? So as the approver, I'm going to review these line items. Now, I do have at the approver level, I do have the ability to come in here and I can update some of this information if need be. So let's say I know this was supposed to be through 2002, or I don't want these bank statements to be disposed of right now. Maybe, for some reason I know that these are involved in, maybe some type of litigation or whatever. I can always delete a line item from this request as well too. I can also what we call reset the signatures, okay, which means is I can remove the requester signature, maybe because there's some line items, let's say this is a request with, 25 line items on it, and there's too many that I've deleted. I might reset the signature, send an email to the request and say, listen, I've deleted these, or there's corrections that need to be made. Please make those corrections and then re-sign it once those corrections are made. So we can reset the signatures as well too. I can also, as an approver, reroute this, okay? So let's say it was routed to me by accident, okay? The person picked my name incorrectly on the list. I can always reroute this to another approver, okay? So if I'm not supposed to sign this request, it was sent to me by accident, I can always reroute it and send it to somebody else as well too, right? So I can just click on that person's name and I can reroute it. So I'm not going to reroute it now because I'm going to sign it, but you have that ability to reroute this form to somebody else at the approver level. But let's say I am the approver for this department, right, and I can sign off on this request. What I'm going to do is just like I did as the requester, I'm going to click on that e-sign button. Now, as default, what will happen is after I put in my PIN number and authenticate, we do display the auditor because that's the next person that needs to sign this. In this case, we only have one auditor listed, which I'll pick, which is Jason Day. And then I'll click on e-sign and forward. And then as soon as I do that and the screen refreshes in green, it will tell me that this request has been e-signed and forwarded successfully. At the bottom under the approver box, I got a green check mark. And if I put my cursor on there, you'll see that it was signed by John Smith on 3/1 at 2:28 p.m. And now that hourglass has moved over to the auditor box, okay, which means it's pending signature from the auditor. So let me log out of here as the approver. I will log in as the auditor real quick, just to show you. And then all the auditor can do in the system is basically sign electronic requests and search disposition requests. They can't create, they can't change, can't delete. All they can do is just sign electronic requests. I'll click on my link here. I'll see here's the one from today, 3/1. I'll click on edit. And again, as the auditor, all I need to do is review it. And if everything's okay, I'm going to click on e-sign. As the auditor, I'll put my PIN number in. Again, and the PIN number comes as part of the setup. And then as the auditor, you'll notice that there's nobody in my recipients box because as the auditor, I'm the last person to sign this request. There is nobody for me to send this to. All I need to do as the auditor is just click on e-sign. And as soon as I do that and the screen refreshes, it'll tell me up at the top in green that this request has been e-signed successfully. And now a green check mark appears in the auditor's checkbox. And if I put my cursor on there, we'll see that this was signed by Jason Day, the auditor, on today's date and time of 2/29/52 p.m. Now, as soon as the last person signs this request, an email automatically will go back to the requester and the approver to let them know that all signatures have been obtained for this request and it's now ready to be submitted to RMS for their review and approval. Okay, so at this point in time, let me log out of here. I'm going to log back in as Fred because he was the first person that created the request. And if I log back in as Fred, now in my inbox, we'll see a line here, a link for disposition request ready for submission to. Okay, when I click on that, we should see the request I did today, which was 2414. I will click on edit. Now what would happen is when I go into this request, I see all my green check marks. Now my submit button here is enabled, and now I can submit this to the state. But before I submit this, I just want to show you this e-signature history button. We keep an audit trail of the date and times and everybody that signed the request and who it has been forwarded to. So again, if you ever want to see your e-signature history, just click on that link and you can come in here and see your signatures. For your disposition request, just to show you what it looks like as well too, is we don't actually put like a script signature in the boxes. What we do is we say electronically signed by, and then we put the person's name there and the date that they signed it. Okay, so you'll see here as the requester, it was signed by Fred Couples on 3/1. As the approver, it was signed by John Smith on 3/1. And then as the auditor, it was signed by Jason Day on 3/1. So again, that's how we put the electronic signatures on the request. It's not actually like a script type signature. And now that I've gotten all my signatures, I can go ahead and submit this to RMS. Again, this is the same legal terminology you get today. Hit OK. And now this request is going to go to RMS for their review and hopefully approval. So again, everything else from this point on is the same that you do in today's world with disposition requests. It's just up to this point. That's how you sign this request with electronic signatures. So let me see. I have a question here. Will any edits be noted in the e-signature history? Good question, Maria Lisa. Yes, when you go to e-sign, I should have showed you, there is a comment box there that you can fill in information, and those comments will appear on the right-hand side here. So if you have to put a comment in when you go to e-sign, let me just see if I have another one here. Let's go back out to the home screen. Let's see if I have another one that's available for electronic signature. Okay, let's reset the signatures. Okay, let me go ahead and sign this. I'll authenticate. And again, here I'm going to forward this to me. I'm going to put, please sign this ASAP. We have a deading day this weekend. Right. So when I do that, when I put that comment in there, e-sign and forward, right, when this refreshes, we get the green check mark. And then in the history, then you'll see there the comments. Please sign ASAP. We have a shredding day this weekend. Okay, so again, that's where those comments go, and that's how you can add those comments. So just wanted to show you that as well too. So I hope that answered that question. But other than that, that's pretty much the electronic signature portion, just about on schedule, 2:35 almost, so 35 minutes. But again, I'll stay on for a couple of minutes to answer any other questions. I will let you know that literally with the electronic signatures, I've seen people create a disposition request, get all their electronic signatures, requester, approver, auditor, and have this submitted to RMS in literally less than anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. And then sometimes, depending how quickly you get it over to RMS, you can actually have an approval very quickly back from them. I can't say same day. I used to see, at some point same day. I guess it depends what analyst takes a look at this request. But literally, it definitely helps getting everybody to, sign this request. It's a little bit easier, I think, for everybody, especially with the auditor, because you don't have to physically fax or mail something to the auditor and wait for the auditor to either fax or mail back to you. The auditor will get an email. So I implore you to get your auditors on board. I will let you know that a lot of the larger auditing or accounting firms here in the state have been doing this already, so they are kind of familiar with it. I mean, if it's a smaller, sole proprietorship or partnership, they might not have done it yet. But like I said, this is kind of the way everything's going, especially with the Artemis system. And like I said, we've been doing it with our RIM system for 4 or 5 years now. And we have probably 75 different towns that have done it at one point or another, with them. So again, it has been in use for a period of time. So let me just check my questions one more time. So another question, if the approver changes the dates, will that show in the e-signature history or only if they put in the comment section? No, it's not gonna put it into the comments. If they change the dates, if the approver changes the dates, they change the dates. I would, say, they could put a note in the comment section that they did change the date, but it's not automatically gonna, make a note that they changed the dates. But they could actually put it into the comment section, any changes that they made to the request. So I know typically, again, we did this, for the state. They had limited budget on what we could do. I mean, yeah, it'd be nice if certain things got, automatically put into comments, but unfortunately, that's, not in the budget this year. Hopefully, as more and more people use this, again, this is a new feature for most people. Hopefully we'll get some good, comments or enhancement requests from, the user base. So, next time we do talk to RMS in the state, we could say, listen, these are some of the features that individuals are asking for within the system. But I think the reality is a lot of times, most of those requests usually don't get changed that often. Most of them usually get submitted as is. Unless there's a blatant error or something that comes up. But typically my experience has been that, most of those requests hardly ever get changed, once it leaves the requester. But again, every organization's different, but just it's been my experience. So those are the questions I've had so far. Again, I'm going to stay on for a couple more minutes. Again, I want to thank everybody for joining me today. I hope this was informative, quick, and easy. If you have any questions, definitely after today's webinar, again, feel free to reach out to me and email me. I will get back to you with, whatever help I can provide. And then if you have any difficulties once you start doing this, again, please let me know. I can walk you through the steps. That's what I'm here for. And then we take it from there. I'm hoping that, we have a successful launch with everybody, especially since the municipalities and the county organization have been on Artemis the longest. But like I said, we rolled this out to the Board of Eds earlier in the year, and they've been using it mostly, the electronic signature part, and have been successful at doing it. So it's been working good. So thanks. I got a question here. Can I get CEU credits for this training? That's a good question, Rhonda. I haven't applied yet for CEU credits for the electronic signature part. I do have CEU credits available for Artemis training. So if you want to email me offline, I have to go back in my notes and see what the Artemis training CEU covers, because it's been a while since I got them, but they might be available and they might apply. So if you could just email me offline to my email address, I will take a look, because I'm not in my office now. I'm in our conference room, so I don't have my regular computer here, so I can take a look at that. So, but yeah, they might be available. I might be able to issue CEUs for this training. So again, thanks everybody. Have a great day, and hope to talk to you soon. Take care.